If there's one thing we've learned about business and life, it's that people are the X factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syya, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bites podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites. I'm Ben and this is Syya. So let's talk about it. Authenticity versus appropriateness in professional situations. Can you always say what's on your mind? I don't know. It really depends on the situation. Depends on the company culture. It depends. Here's the thing. I worked in the construction business. I grew up in the construction business. You could say what was ever on your mind. You got into the face of the foreman, until you actually took a swing at him. It was basically sloughed off. Everybody yelled at each other. It was done with, and you moved on. But that was 45 years ago. And when we sit there and look at the world today, and EDI and politically correct and all these wonderful things, it's getting harder and harder and harder for people to say authentically what's on their mind without doublespeak and couching and pulling punches. And because of this, all of a sudden, decisions get made, projects get greenlit, whatever that never should have, because somebody's afraid to say, you know what, your baby is ugly, and no hat and no cute shoes are going to make this thing better. We need to bury this thing in the crib that it came in. We need sometimes to have the ability to authentically say, you know what, this just isn't going to work. But it's getting harder and harder to do that today. So, Syya, let's gnaw on this.
Wow, I was going to take this topic in a different direction. So
That's okay.
let me re-swizzle and let
That's
me
fine.
recalibrate.
Perfect.
I do think there is a balance that you always have to do between your authentic who you are and wherever the situation might be. It's that thing that my sister used to say to me all the time as a kid. Time and place. There's a time and place for everything. And another wonderful idiom, you need to also know how to read the room for that time and place. So to me, being who you're authentic, who you are is great, but being who your authentic are doesn't necessarily mean you have the quote right to blather or make a statement or something, because you have the right to be your real person to say whatever you want to say. So I think there's always going to be a level of tact required. I think there's going to be a level of consideration of the audience with whom you're speaking with, and understand that you can have constructive conversations, keep it in the realm of facts. And if you can do that, you'll probably have a much more constructive conversation and still be authentic to who you are. Right? So
I hope so. I hope that is that level of conversation. I'm finding that people are pulling punches more and more today. They're pulling punches. I mean, it doesn't matter how articulate you are. It doesn't matter how you're able to couch a situation, this, that, the other thing. People are sitting there going, I can't talk about this. And I won't talk about that, or I'm going to just leave that alone. And they're taking away their ability to have certain levels of conversations within any situation because they're afraid of ramifications, either real or imagined, that could either create conflict within the organization that they don't want to have to deal with, or it's going to lead to their own demise politically within the organization itself. And I hope that people are able to be their authentic self. I hope people are able to sit there and say, I have enough trust in the organization. I belong within the organization. I'm respected enough and trusted enough within the organization that I can bring up things that I'm passionate about and be able to articulate it. And whether I win or whether I lose, we can have a real live, effective conversation about certain things. I'm sitting there going, yes and no. Those levels of conversation and the amount of levels of disputes within organizations is becoming less and less, and people are becoming far more and more political in terms of how things are couched or not brought up at all. And that actually scares me a lot. I think it's wrong. I think that we need to be able to feel safe to be able to bring up topics that we're concerned about. But I think we need to be able to do it in a way that is constructive and not destructive.
I hear what you're saying. I think maybe, again, clarifying. I mean, in a business context, unless the business is absolutely 100% affected by, let's say, a act of Congress law that's been dictated, meaning like, let's say, for example, if Congress had banned 5G deployment for whatever reason, right?
Whatever. Yeah.
Obviously, as a telco company, you'd be like, we got to talk about this, right? Now, I do think you can have, again, constructive conversations that's appropriate for the business setting. I don't, and I know we're human, so we're going to have to find some level of connections with our colleagues and whatnot that we could talk about things outside of purely, oh, did you see the moldy strawberry on level floor, fourth floor? Like, yeah, I get that. I guess, I guess for me, and I have a very hard and fast rule. I just don't talk about politics or religion, period. And that's my
Yes.
boundary that I have for myself. If other people want to talk about it, honestly, let them. It's kind of like I don't care. Like I really, and I think
And a
I
lot of
think.
organizations are banning conversations on religion and politics for
ah,
those particular reasons, because you have people on a variety of different ends of the spectrum that are, that, but I'm not talking about those conversations.
Okay, because
I,
yeah, maybe
I'm,
I'm getting a little bit
I mean,
lost.
let's get beyond that. Let's get into the conversations that deal with the business itself. And that your viewpoint is completely contrary to the view of your boss's boss, and they're invested in this, and their reputation is based on this project. They're proud of this thing. They're the ones that are the champion of the product, and that the way the product is going forward is going to go down the toilet because of something that you see. And you bring this up may or may not be, depending on the culture of the organization, political suicide.
Okay, again, I think this is a previous conversation that we had about that, right? Is it your battle to fight if it's your boss's boss type thing, right? Like what role do you have such that
If you're the subject
contributes.
matter expert,
Okay, so you're the subject matter expert and your boss's boss is like, I don't care about your knowledge and they're overriding it. To me, that would be a conversation of they have their reasons and you could address it. It could also be, I'm sorry, people, cover your you know what, put it into writing. Okay, Billy, you disagree with me. Okay, Mary, you disagree with me. In my professional expertise and opinion, the insights that I've given you here are the pros and cons, ramifications. Here's a potential of success. Should we look at a different route? It's all about how you communicate it back, right? And if it's something where you're like, again, like for me, and everyone knows who I am, man. Like I don't
mhm,
have a lot of filters because I am what I am. But I also understand, I know at times I have to soften my delivery. I have to stop and go, you're, you know, barking up the wrong tree, though I say it half jokingly, doesn't. communicate over text very well, right?
Right.
So soften it, have the wherewithal. You can still be yourself. You can still very much, and trust me, if you guys have read my emails, maybe we should do an email comparison party, like, and be like, look at what I wrote here. Holy crap on crackers, right? Like it is ultimately be pure to as long as you're um uh the boss ain't asking you to like rob the bank, okay? It's not robbing you of integrity, it's not robbing you of your moral compass. You know what? I'm gonna go back to being okay. Sometimes you gotta bite your tongue. If you adamantly disagree, I say document that SHITE
Yes.
like crazy. And it is what it is, kids. Sometimes you don't got the power. You're not negotiating for a position of strength with your
True.
opinion sometimes. So understand input received and taken or ignored. Either way, you did your part, right? And that's
If you
all you can
if
do.
you feel, and I agree with you 100%. I do agree with you 100%. If you're in an organization where you can at least have that initial conversation, say, I disagree with you because, and these are the challenges that I see within moving forward within this. You know what? You're the boss. We're going to do whatever you want to say. Let me just say that here are the challenges that I'm seeing with moving forward in this direction. If you have a culture that enables you to have that conversation, and you lose, then you document it, you move on. It's their decision. That's why they get paid the higher bucks than you do.
Eh,
But if you're in an organization that doesn't even allow for contradictory viewpoints to be brought up, then I think that you're in a situation where you need to sit there and say, is that really where you want to be? And is
right,
that
right
really
there.
where
Yep.
where you should be? And I think that that's where I'm looking at, is to sit there and say, okay, how many organizations do we look at where people are afraid to speak up?
Okay, so we're gonna leave it at that because I know we're running out of time here. But let me just roll this with you. Um, and I find it fascinating that we're having this conversation because I almost want to say our generation are like we're gonna stick to it. We have a stick to itiveness because we've grown
Yep.
up that way. I would probably articulate this conversation right now is maybe for our group of people. Maybe it could be our generation age wise or our upbringing. If you have a mentality of like never quit, like endure, understand this conversation might be for you to say, wait, I do have options available to me. I do have value
Hmm.
elsewhere that maybe I aligns my, my values elsewhere, or I want to be heard, or whatever it might be. Because I'm telling you, there's a certain demographic that is used to this. I think there's a balance though between is just because something's like, oh, I felt disrespected, so I quit. Like that's the other extreme, right? So let's just make sure everyone's clear on this is that, document, I think is always a good piece of
Yeah.
advice in anything in life. But also understand though too that like, maybe you do have to like all relationships, maybe you need to walk away. Yes.
And
Or
walking away doesn't mean totally walking away. Sometimes walking away just means, you know what, I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee, and it might be time for me to go have lunch. Or if you're in a meeting, maybe it's time for a bio break or something like that, where maybe you just need to get out of the room for 2 or 3 minutes so you can just refocus yourself and sit there and say, all right, maybe saying what I desperately wanted to say may not be the right thing to say at this point in time. And sometimes, as you said, tact is the better part of valor. There are times where you need to stand up and you need to sit there and say, wait a second here, hang on, respectfully, let's sit down and let's talk about this because I have concerns based on this, and this, and it's about the idea and not the person. But in a lot of cases, you need to sit there and say, okay, is this a battle worth having? Is it the fact that I just need to be right and I need that person to be wrong, or is it the fact that I actually think that this there are serious ramifications for not saying something, and I think that we need to go into our own psyche and do that litmus test,
do
and
that.
that's where I think we're both agreeing here, but articulating it is really important.
100. Look, we could keep talking about that because I think it's very relevant. I think there's a lot more to it. I think there's a lot of different scenarios that might be coloring what, how you'd, but the bottom line is, guys, again, it goes back to what I always say, don't be a dictator, right? Like, don't, like, just be able to articulate yourself in a way where it still remains true to who you are, document where you need to be, and it doesn't compromise your morals and integrity and your compass, etc. If you find at any point in time it does do that, then that's your sign, people. Time to leave.
I
That's it.
agree. I agree. So let's leave it with those words of wisdom. I'm Ben,
I see ya.
and we'll see you soon.
Hey, hey, hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Not On This Business Bites. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. If you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at IamBenBaker.com or me at BrilliantBeanMedia.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through digital content and podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. See you next week for another episode of Not On This Business Bites.